You probably haven't had dinner. I'm sorry, I didn't bring the air fryer, so I can't help you this evening. And I know you'll be here till 8 o'clock, so I wish you well. If you have any questions, feel free to ask me. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other public comment? If not, let us move on to the approval of the minutes for 2 meetings, February 20 and February 29. And if it's okay with everyone, we'll combine those, and I'll receive a motion for approval for both of those sets. Let us move to new business. I will ask Jim to take us to the final report.
Thank you, Ronnie. We have put together just 2 pages, could have a little bit of additional information on a third, depending on your actions tonight, but drafted what would be a report with your recommendations. It's structured very similar, in a similar manner to the previous 2009 report, in that it's just a couple of pages to give the City Commission the actions that you have taken. We would have an agenda item for the March 27th meeting that would add a little bit more to that. For instance, you have done a lot of work that's recorded in your minutes and materials that you've reviewed and all that sort of thing. We would make them aware of that either by attaching that to the agenda item or providing them the same link and having discussions with them, so that report would be just that, a report of your actions, not intended to convey everything you might have said or discussed, since that's been captured elsewhere. We, on the charter recommendations, we have identified on the size of the governing body, the conduct of primary elections, and the charter review committees. We have included language that reflects the votes you've taken, so if there's something there that doesn't look right, you need to let us know. And then on city commission salaries, we have left that to be determined, because that's on your agenda tonight. And then similarly, additional recommendations, we've identified the things that are on your agenda for you, and what we would need to do, what we'll do before we leave tonight, though, is make sure that on any of those things that we're clear, so that we can administratively finish the report with the consultation, probably with the chair and the vice chair, since they've led to various meetings, to make sure that we capture any of these last items, so that then the chair could present the report to the city commission on Wednesday, March 27th. He obviously couldn't be here tonight, but we have confirmed with him that he'll be available to do that for the commission meeting.
I have a question on the report regarding the conduct of primary elections, page 12.
Yes.
That last sentence, after we talk about 2-person contests being in November, it says under certain circumstances, 2-person races could appear on a municipal primary ballot in August. I don't recall discussing a 2-person candidacy in August.
What that sentence is designed to say, that heretofore, meaning prior to this action,
Yes.
that was the case, so that it clarified for a person who hasn't been part of your meetings that that was the issue that was before you, and that you're making a change.
I missed that, sorry.
That's quite all right. That's why we're having this discussion.
Any other comments regarding the draft report?
Got it, yep, thank you. I apologize, as one who often has the E left off the end of his, I sympathize with the failure to capitalize.
All right, any other comments or members? If not, let's move on to old business. And our first discussion item is compensation, commission compensation. And I think that you had a request.
Yes, thank you, Madam Vice Chair. And on this item, you asked us to provide you some information concerning models A, E, and F as they had been previously presented. So if you looked at the material, there were 2 things that we presented in each of those cases. The second half of that, that's a ballot question, just some very preliminary language. We would obviously work with the city attorney to make sure we have all those, and did work with the city attorney to get to this point, but there could be fine tuning and such, and make sure we meet all the legal requirements. But above the ballot question, in this case, what we have done is written what the language in the charter would look like after the action. So for instance, on Model A, percentage of county commission, you see section 23 salaries, there's in italics, that's what it would look like in the charter. And then the ballot question is what the question would be as put in front of the public. You'll note that on that particular item, we put in bold 2/3, and that was so that I would not forget to say, we don't presume what you will decide, but on the next item on the Model F, if you remember from the discussion, for our county, if we followed that Model F, it would end up with something close to 2/3. So really what we were doing is making an equivalent of the two, but you can choose whatever figure you wish. And then Model F is the salary study approach, and provided some language there. So I think that covers what we've given you there. Let you discuss unless you have a question.
Beth, you had a question? Comment?
Withdraw my question that I never asked.
I got it. Anyone else? Comments regarding the information that's provided, starting with Model A? Any questions about or comments? Okay. E. Model E. Yes.
I'd like to say that I am, of these solutions here, I'm most in favor of Model E, making the salary proportionate to the relative size of the city within the county. I've lived in Tallahassee for almost 50 years, and during that time, the city has grown immensely, population has grown immensely. Of course, a big reason for the growth of the city is through various annexations over history. And with each annexation, it seems like there's more of the city to do. Certainly the budget of the city has increased dramatically as opposed to the county. So if we were to consider any salary increase, then I would most support Model E. I don't think just a straight dependency on the county commission salary is in Model A. It really is irrelevant what the county commissioners make regarding what the city is. And the solution for Model F that we're asking for an additional community committee, which is basically similar to what we're doing here. And so there would be no reason to just repeat that issue sometime in the future. So I would be for Model E myself.
Beth?
I do have questions.
Okay.
On
No,
ballpark, what this would look like? What is this? I don't even know what the city population and the county population is.
So it's approximately 2/3. So that was why we put the 2/3 in A, just because they're equivalent.
But this allows for adjustments based on growth as a
Right,
population.
so the model,
Mr. Payne.
so in the Model A, if your population grew or shrank, you'd still be at whatever 2/3 or whatever percentage you set, whereas in this one, if the city's population grew or shrank as a percentage of the county, then the commissioner's salary would adjust accordingly.
Yes,
So the county salaries right now, are they not paid somehow to the population as well?
It's a statutory calculation based on population, and it's a table really that is applied to any county. Leon and every other county has the same table with a base number and then an incremental amount if your population is between the tiers. But yes, it is a population number that is the basis for that number.
Right, so Model A does take into consideration population in the sense that it's using that formula.
Yes, Model A takes into account population growth overall in the county. And so as the county population grows, so does the county commission salary and therefore the city commission salary. In the Model E, it is, if the county's population was cut in half and the city was still 2/3, then the city would make 2/3 of that number. So the distinction is the population within the county, as opposed to the total county population. Model A is based on the total county population. Model E draws the comparison between the city and the county relatively within the county. But yes, both depend on population.
And as we've discussed before that the review, the county does follow the statute, they are not required to follow the statute. Is there any concern that at some point they would choose not to, and that would throw this into disarray? I mean, it would throw what how we currently do it in disarray too. We still currently base it on their salary.
It would not affect Model E.
And I can speak to that.
Yes, please.
But correct me if I say this wrong, but in that language that we provided on Model A, we say the salary of a Leon County Commissioner shall be the salary computed pursuant to Chapter 145. So right now, the county uses 145, but if the county chose not to use 145, the state does the calculation for all
Right.
67 counties, whether they use it or not.
Yeah, I was just concerned putting
You're
something
right.
in the
You're
charter
right
that was
on.
pointing to something where they could like change their mind and it's a completely different group of people that could just like. It could reduce, well, I suppose.
Did I
Yes.
say that right?
Could reduce well. Thank you.
One thing I forgot to say, I wanted to thank the city attorney for responding to my request for the charter language and the ballot language. I know that kind of threw you for a loop at first, but you responded very well and it's been very helpful to help us figure this out.
Other comments?
In the last meeting, I was in favor of Model E, but last couple of days I was thinking about it, and we are setting our salary suggestion based on the population. But you know, when you're looking at the workload, like one of the speakers discussed, and overall the budget of the city and the county of the city, clearly Model E does not take any of that into consideration at all. How much of a workload, how much of a responsibility that city commissioners have compared to county commissioners or overall in general. Model E also doesn't take into account that we do have county commissioners, district commissioners that have relatively less constituents, 50,000, 47,000, 67,000. Only 2 county commissioners have the entire 300,000 population. So, so there is some sort of unfairness there, but the county can deal with that later on. But I guess my point is I'm kind of moving away from Model E in this meeting. I was really in favor of it in the last meeting. I'm just gonna focus on Model A, and I'm just gonna make a couple suggestions here. That I think Model A has a very clear language. I think the voters will be able to understand Model A a little bit better. The ballot language is cleaner. I think it's easier to advocate for or advocate against this ballot initiative. So I will suggest this committee, let's just, I'm just gonna make a motion for the purpose of process of elimination. Again, we all agree that there should be some sort of increase, and I have not made up my mind to whether, I'm not sure what that should be, and I'm just trying to see where the conversation, but for the sake of argument, I'm just going to motion to set the city commission's salaries equal to the county commissions. Now, that 2/3 bold written, that's just going to say equal, and that's gonna be the only difference. So, that Model A, so again, I made the motion so that let's just start this process of elimination. If the board says it's not a good idea, let's just strike this down, move on to the next one, let's talk about 2/3, let's talk about the other ones, and eventually get to Model E, and let's figure this out. But I think we're just talking about many options and start eliminating a couple of those now. So the motion on the floor is to set the city commission salaries equal to county commission salaries.
Is there a second? So the motion dies for lack
Awesome.
of a
Great.
second.
All right.
You want to go to the next one?
Yeah, let's go to the next one. I'll go ahead and say, no, this is great. This is great. This is working. Let's just knock these out. Awesome. So I'll go ahead and move to set the city commission salaries equal to 2/3 of the county commission salaries.
Using Model A.
Model A, correct,
Is there a second?
for a discussion.
Second. Properly moved to second, we're now ready for discussion. Comments?
I mean, I'm gonna vote down on this motion. I think I've been pretty consistent throughout this conversation. I don't think that's the way to do it. I think that the way that this is gonna play out on the ballot is not gonna accomplish the intent of the committee members that wanna see a raise, and so I don't think it's, and I'll add to, I think Model A and E, extremely well drafted, but I think they accomplish the same thing via different vehicles, and so I'm actually, I like Model F. I know at the last meeting I said I don't know how that would work functionally, and Mr. Payne's comment is well taken. I'm a little hesitant to see another committee go over this, but on the other hand, I think it merits some discussion. I like that there's 4 months to talk through it. I like that they're going to focus specifically on this. I mean, to Mr. Payne's comments, we essentially had 60 days to work through 4 different items. This is something that I feel like probably needed, just because of the mechanics of deciding the salary, especially with all the different economic factors that we're taking in. I feel like this probably did need a little bit more time and discussion, and frankly, it probably needed, and this is, as much aimed at me as the rest of the committee, it probably needed some folks that are maybe more oriented towards that line of thinking. And so, I am supportive of Model F. I know that no one else has spoken on behalf of that, but I'll be down on the motion, so.
Any other comments? Any other discussion?
I'm leaning
Dr.
towards,
Stover.
as Jared suggested, I'm leaning towards Model F as well. I started more with closer to E and A, but as we've deliberated over it, and I've heard the discussion, Model F seems like the most appropriate approach to me, so I'm not convinced that we go with this just because it looks like we need more time, and we needed to further investigate the financial implications of each of these. So that's where I am at the moment. So yeah, Model F looks better.
I struggle with Model S because of the completion time that it would take to meet, then get it on the ballot. It seems like a lot of work. And I don't know if I think 2/3 is the correct number, but it's also independent and less subject to criticism based on who is selected as the study committee. I mean, so to me, Model F brings that opportunity for criticism of the process, whereas Model A and Model E are very clear formulas that are easy to understand, and they don't bring any political bias in with them.
Other discussion? Yes.
Yeah, thank you. So I've made these comments, some of them before, I'm making them again, and they sort of apply to the rest if there's additional motions that come up. So I won't repeat them. But, we talked about this is a complicated issue. There's many of the things that we deal with here are complicated. And the time frame may not be suitable to take action on something like this. But that's a whole other issue. Most commissioners have a day job. They have a full-time job. I don't understand how you have 2 full-time salaries at that level that we're proposing. I don't get it. I think the optics are terrible. I think after you pass what's been passed, a significant tax increase, to turn around and now up salaries, it just goes in the wrong direction for me. So those are my comments, and I'll let them stand for any further discussion. Thank you.
Can I ask a clarifying question?
Sure.
Are you opposed to any salary increase audit at all?
I was, I had made a mistake. I don't want to do it. I didn't think that what we had in place right now was increasing, but it is. And once I realized that that was the situation, that there is an increase that the state looks at, they adjust the figures, and the salaries are increased. I could be open to a minimal thing, but I think I asked the question before, and I may be off base on how much of a raise. The 2/3 would be, but in my mind, that's anywhere near it.
6%.
Yeah.
Currently, at 50% of the county commissioner's salary, a city commissioner makes $49,000. Going to 2/3 would increase that to about 67,000, so it's about a $16,000 or $17,000
16 to 17.
change.
Yeah, see, that's way too much for me.
Okay, we have a motion and a second on the floor regarding Model A. Any other comments about Model A? Not, all those in favor say aye. Those,
We would need to also appreciate a show of hands.
show of hands, please.
Yeah.
All right.
Good. They didn't add up to 9, but I got 5.
Yeah.
Okay. 5, 6.
2 against
And
10.
I'm the
opposed?
full- No, no, no.
Oh, you're on the floor, okay, so fails 3 to 6.
3-6.
All right. Attorney James.
I move in favor of Model F. With change to the use of the term salary study to compensation, so that it would read establish a compensation committee in the charter upon the receipt of report from a compensation committee. And then also the ballot question would refer to compensation committee.
Second.
The other thing I saw was the first line of the second paragraph of the charter language says the city commission upon receipt of a report from a salary study committee may set the annual salary of the members of the city commission. I'm sure that also meant the mayor, but in other areas of the language, mayor and city commissioners were different. So I recommend that mayor be added to your sentence. That's
You still
I'll
at
step-
second?
yes.
All right, we're ready for discussion.
So Beth had some concerns and I wanted to address them and make sure I'm understanding the mechanics of this right. So if the salary study or the compensation committee meets, at that point, we go to ordinance. There wouldn't be another ballot question that followed that. Is that accurate?
Correct.
Less than 5, no more than 7, so they just appoint one each, and those citizens and how political this committee got, that committee is not gonna get political. I mean, I think that we could go towards hiring a third-party consultant but then how much we're gonna pay the consultant, and if third-party consultant is hired by city manager, oh my God, Twitter is gonna come down. And then if not hired by the city manager, then city commission does not have authority to hire. I mean, this whole committee situation is, I think, very complicated. It does not, I guess where Ms. Corum is going to is that you're just going to, you're going to have each commissioner appoint their folks on that committee to make a recommendation, and the recommendation just becomes the ordinance, and the ordinance automatically passes. I think just going into that whole another process, I think our community needs to have a solid process, and I think that process needs to be in our charter, and we should just forget about this, and it should be on an autopilot. Then the question becomes how soon that committee is gonna get together. Is it every charter review? Is it every 8 weeks? Is it every 8 years, every 6 years, every 5 years? So, I mean, we have to maybe, and again, how are we willing to put this on a ballot right now, and how easy that's going to be to convey to the voters about what we're trying to do. So I think this whole Model F is extremely complicated. I'm all for it. You know, if that's where the committee wants to go, I'll just be team player, and I'll just move forward with it. But the reason why the salaries are always, not always, but most of the time it's in the charter, is that it lifts the political pressure of the commissioners. And I think that is a valid point, where there's an autopilot, and then it's fair, it's adjusted automatically, whether it's tied to the CPI or tied to the population. And this community doesn't go through another political drama over salaries every 2 years or 4 years or 6 years. I think it's a very complicated process. F is.
Other comments?
Yeah, so I've heard a few people talk about the political element of this, and I just, I think we're talking about political backlash on both sides. I mean, I think if you take Model A or E and you throw it on there, somebody's gonna sit there and calculate, this is what the increase is gonna look like, and you're gonna see mailers around, does Commissioner A or B or C or the mayor deserve to make this number versus that number? Have they earned this or that? I think this is all gonna be inherently political, and I think it would be incumbent on the commission, whoever it may be, 10, 20 years down the road, at the time that this happens, to choose inherently apolitical people for this purpose. And I think we all have our own biases on this committee, but I think we've done a really good job of not bringing those into this process, despite some of the outside comments to that effect. And so, I trust the process that would look like in the future too, whether it's the current commission or the commission down the road. And so I think either way, there are going to be people that don't like it, but I think this creates a process where you can have an open discussion that it's like we've had here, but it's more focused. Again, I just like this one all around, because I think that it also, the other aspect of whatever we do is that the current sitting commission is going to have to vote on it anyways. And so if we submit to them 2/3 of the annual salary set by the state law for members of the Board of County Commissioners of Leon County, Florida, they're still gonna have to vote on what it comes out to. At least in this case, we've given them a process to go through to create an unbiased, theoretically unbiased viewpoint of what this should look like, and then they have that cover to then go develop an ordinance around that. And so I think it provides a good balance of, if we believe that they deserve a raise, again, I'm not convinced that A&E make it through the ballot process anyways, but at least here we've put together a process that gives everybody a little bit of cover, and gives it the due diligence that it deserves. So I'll be up on the motion.
Other comments? Is your hand kinda up?
Could you restate the motion? It's kind of complex.
So the motion is that we adopt Model F, subject to revisions. The revisions being, replacing, salary study with compensation, and adding a reference to, the city commission upon receipt of a report from the compensation committee, setting the annual salary of the members of the city commission and mayor by ordinance.
Any other discussion? Let me just add that I am definitely in favor of this because it takes into account things other than population. And if you just took a random sampling of the duties required of a city commissioner, it probably will help you to understand that if you do a compensation study, regardless of, and I think the commission will have the opportunity, if they wanted to set aside money, to bring in someone who has expertise in this area to actually do that. Then you remove all of the other things that we've been talking about, for people selecting people that they know, et cetera, et cetera. So,
Madam Chair, can I
yes.
make one more comment? I want to thank the city attorney because, I think when I had kind of the idea around a separate committee, I think y'all probably were all frustrated. You're like, well, what does that look like? And I'm like, I don't know. And, last week I was ready to kind of give up on the concept, but what you've put together here, I think is brilliant. And so.
Okay, I really just want to give credit where credit is due.
Well,
Matt Lutz really helped with this.
y'all have-
Really,
well,
I
yes.
really want to credit Matt.
But y'all did an
Thank
incredible
you for
job. I
calling
mean,
me
this
on it.
is
Appreciate it.
well thought out. This is good policy. And so I just thank you guys so much.
And related to that, I'd like to give Ms. Dorsey her credit, for pressing this concept, even after I abandoned the concept.
Any other comments? All right.
I have a question. So if this gets approved, if it looks like it's gonna be approved, how do you envision this going forward, that people get to vote on setting up a committee, or people get to vote on after the committee comes back with something? I'm not sure what we're looking at here.
I'll let Jim chime in, but the commission, remember, the only thing we're doing is making recommendations
Understood.
anyway. So they could say, we really like this idea, but what we're going to vote on, and somebody makes another motion that embodies this, but has other tweaks
But
to it.
I'm asking about this.
Right.
Yeah.
What is your question?
I think that's
Go
okay.
ahead.
I think what this would do was this would have on the ballot, the citizens would approve the city commission establishing a compensation study committee and bringing back a result which the city commission would then enact by ordinance, but the citizens would not weigh in on at the ballot what those actual salaries would be. Obviously, with an ordinance being passed, the citizens' opportunity would be a public hearing and that sort of thing. So it would be a public hearing rather than a ballot on the amount.
Thank you.
Any other? Yes, sir.
Can I make a friendly amendment? Can we tie this at least to charter review cycle, recommend title, or, so how does that,
So the current language says, as advised, I believe,
Deemed
deemed to be advisable. So it's my understanding that the commission could determine that it needs to appoint the compensation committee. So it could be 4 years from now. It doesn't have to be tied to the charter review that they deem that a review needs to take place.
so commission just randomly could come back any month and just establish this committee to review their salaries?
Yes.
Okay.
The same way they did this one.
All right.
After the ballot.
What is it?
After the ballot initiative.
Sure,
Or
if-
after the
if this
ballot,
passes.
If it passed, right.
Yeah, I
If
see.
it makes it to the ballot, and then if all
Yeah.
the rules.
Yeah, if it goes through and then.
Yes.
Well, so to complete my comments on this one, one more question then. Based on this, are they going to create an ordinance, or this just goes into the charter as is, and then they just trigger that clause in the charter automatically, and then they create the committee?
So I think what would happen is if it makes it to the ballot and the citizens adopt this way of setting salaries, then it goes to the commission to create the compensation committee and to move forward with an ordinance setting the salaries.
Which could simply be the ordinances, they're set the way they're set today.
It could be.
Whatever.
So, okay, so this is creating the mechanics to create the ordinance that eventually sets the salaries.
Correct.
All
That's
right,
right.
so we are genuinely punting the ball down the court.
If I could, Madam Chair, if I could. I think what it is just that it's, the reason it would have to go on the ballot is because it changes the current process. So
Yeah.
it's just describing a different way of setting salaries.
Mhm.
And rather than just saying what that other salary would be. So it's just a different,
I see.
it has to be amended because it's a different process than what's presented in the charter now.
Sure, and whatever the suggestion comes out of this committee, commission will adopt it eventually, then it turns into ordinance. Okay.
Yes.
Got it, sounds good. This is all.
There's just one last comment. I think we've heard the arguments pro and con having this in the charter, a formula. I'm in favor of that approach, even though I'm against the raises. But I think as far as taking the local politics out of it, having a formula in the charter does that. So that's what I'm.
Okay, very good. Any other? I'm gonna shut down any. All right, I think we're ready for the vote. All those in favor say aye. Raise your hand. Those who oppose have the same right. All right. Madam Chair.
Before we move on, I want to go back to, if I may, the recommended report, which will outline the recommendation, and just either ask or ask, I want to clarify my expectations on it stating that we actually took action in support of an increase, and that this mechanism was what we were recommending. I just think something needs to be communicated that that action was actually taken.
We're happy to do that. I would rather have just a, motion and a vote by the committee to that effect. Appreciate
We
it.
did have that motion.
Well,
And so we bifurcated. The vote was,
Let-
oh, go ahead.
let me ask, when did you vote to have an increase?
2 meetings ago?
I think you voted to consider an increase, and there is a distinction. Because at that time, I think that was, the decision was, let's decide whether we even want to talk about an increase, and you said yes, and then you've talked about an increase, but I don't think you've actually taken an action that says there should be an increase. Just to, but if you say you have, I can be corrected.
I thought, and again, this may be, it may be intent, but I thought that we took action where a majority of the committee were in support of an increase, and that we were.
Thank you, I stand corrected. The minutes of the February 20th meeting say Dr. Bruce Strubel moved to recommend increasing commissioner compensation. And then conversation ensued, so you're correct, and it will reflect that.
Awesome.
Thank you. All right, let's get back to the agenda. Oh, I'm sorry.
Yeah, getting back to the agenda, I think we're going to ethics now, is that the idea?
Yes, sir.
And there's two items there. First is that I think we've heard some input about which one is considered priority, and can we consider that whistleblower item first?
Sure, unless, I think that you brought it to the committee, so let.
Yes, last week, I came to the committee prepared to respond to questions regarding these requests, and Sharon asked for
formal presentation, which was rightly so, but I am not very good at extemporaneous speaking. So I'd like to give my presentation now, if that's all right.
Absolutely.
There have been many calls in recent years to address the image of corruption in Tallahassee government. We see it in op-eds and hear it at public meetings like this one. The perception of corruption leads to loss of trust, and the only way we can restore trust in city government is through transparency and accountability. The ethics training provided to all city employees emphasizes that the ethics board can only do its job if employees are willing to report inappropriate activity when they see it. A survey conducted by the Inspector General in 2021 showed that at that time only 25% of city employees who had witnessed improper activities reported what they had seen. This statistic was used to justify the authorization of whistleblower protection by the Inspector General. When people are fearful for their jobs, they tend to keep quiet. The Florida Whistleblower Act provides the framework for government agencies at all levels to protect whistleblowers from retribution for revealing improper activities by government officials. In Tallahassee, the Inspector General has been assigned the statutory role of appropriate local official to receive and investigate whistleblower complaints. But the Inspector General himself has said that, on the record, that there is a gap in whistleblower protection with regard to cases involving the City Commission, since he serves at the will of that body. The gap also extends to his own office, since he can't investigate himself. The Independent Ethics Board has the necessary independence to fill this gap. At the direct request of Mayor Daley, Inspector General Dennis Sutton has worked with the Ethics Officer Dwight Floyd, both of whom are here today, to develop procedures to share whistleblower responsibilities without conflict between the offices. All that's needed to implement their plan is to extend whistleblower authority to the Ethics Board, which, according to the city attorney, can only be done through charter amendment. This extended authority would provide protection to the appointed officials who report directly to the City Commission. Without this authority, the Inspector General could find himself in a situation where he knows that a majority of the City Commission may disagree with an area or target of investigation. He might find himself in the uncomfortable position of completing an investigation at the peril of his own job. To illustrate this possibility, last October, as the City Commission was debating the scope of the current charter review, Mr. Sutton publicly requested that the scope include a definition of the role of Inspector General. This position was originally created by ordinance as an additional responsibility to the Office of the City Auditor. The Commission's discussion regarding Mr. Sutton's request included the explicit statement that a charter definition would inhibit the City Commission from abolishing the IG's office in the future should they desire to. The scope was not extended. You can imagine the chilling effect this might have on any Inspector General if investigations lead them into an area that may be embarrassing to one or more of the City Commissioners, the IG supervisors. This could have the effect of corrupting the whole process. We should recommend that the Ethics Board be given the authority to protect the IG's job by extending whistleblower authority. This will go a long way toward restoring public trust in government. Regarding the issue of the Ethics Board's jurisdiction over commissioners when they sit as board members of external agencies. Last week, the ethics officer pointed out that the Ethics Board has already ruled on one issue regarding alleged infractions of the Ethics Code by the mayor while sitting on the CRA board. I actually remember at least two other similar instances regarding other commissioners. Each of these cases was dismissed by the Ethics Board for lack of probable cause based on the facts revealed in the investigations. In the future, though, actual violations of the Ethics Code by city commissioners sitting as CRA or Blueprint board members could escape accountability if a defense was raised regarding lack of jurisdiction. The intent here is to clear up this ambiguity in order to avoid unnecessary litigation in the future. It is true that Chapter 112 of Florida statutes governs the ethical behavior of all government employees and officials at any level. But the Tallahassee Independent Ethics Board was created to provide local oversight and to allow for a more strict code of ethics than that of the state where necessary. The CRA and Blueprint are responsible for allocating hundreds of millions of dollars of local taxpayer money. The citizens deserve local oversight of the individuals responsible for this. We should recommend that the Ethics Board's jurisdiction be explicitly defined in the charter to cover commissioners when they sit on these boards. One other point of clarification. The city attorney provided 2 opinions with our packet tonight. In each case, these opinions were drafted in response to recommendations by the Ethics Board for ordinances to affect the changes that were requested. The opinions clearly state that since these changes could either add to the duties of the Ethics Board, as defined in the charter, or to the jurisdiction of the board, as defined in the charter, the changes could only be made by charter amendments going to referendum. That was the reason that the ordinances were rejected 2 years ago. In my reading, there was no expressed opinion regarding the advisability of making those changes, only that the method of enacting the recommendations by ordinance rather than charter amendment was not appropriate. This is why we're still talking about it today. So I'll still be glad to respond to any questions, but to facilitate at this time, I'd like to begin with a motion to recommend a charter amendment to authorize the Independent Ethics Board as an appropriate local official to receive and investigate whistleblower complaints.
Second.
Properly moved in second, we're now ready for discussion.
Can I ask a question? So, in the event of a whistleblower complaint, what does that process look like? So, I'm a whistleblower, I work at the city hall, and I saw somebody do something that I thought was wrong. So now what happens, and what does that look like? How am I protected through the process? How is my complaint protected through the process?
I will tell you what I know. The city attorney and the inspector general here can probably advise us on that as well. But the way the system works, as I understand it, is if the complaint matches the very specific statutory requirements for a whistleblower protection, meaning they are reporting on specific activities like misappropriation of funds or gross mismanagement or misfeasance. If the bad activity matches those requirements, then an official whistleblower complaint can be filed. At that point, their identity is protected. It's exempt from public records law. And an investigation is begun at that point to determine the truth of it all.
Follow up? Sure. So, once the investigation is initiated, how much of that is available to the public versus, I mean, because I think the intent of the whistleblower, the whole intent of having a whistleblower protection is so that the whistleblower is protected.
Right.
And so.
At this point, regarding to the ethics board, everything the ethics board is done is public record until the point where a complaint is filed. At that point, the activities of the ethics board goes into an investigation and an executive session. The ethics board will make a judgment based on the complaint. At the end of that judgment, whether there is basically a guilt or not guilty verdict, it then becomes public record. The difference, I believe, with the Inspector General is with an official whistleblower complaint, that complaint stays exempt from public record. Glad for a clarification there for you.
But then that's explained in the Inspector General here, so.
Can we have that clarification?
Sure, if you don't mind.
Thank you for allowing me this opportunity. The whistleblower complaint would remain, the identity of the whistleblower would remain confidential at that point, even after the termination of the investigation, regardless of whether it was sustained or not sustained.
And then, I'm sorry, someone else will open that.
All right, is there a follow-up to
I
that?
have one more question to follow
Go
up with
ahead,
the.
then we'll go to
Inspector
Ms.
General.
Carter.
So, the contents of the complaint, and I think you can kind of see where I'm going with that. If the identity of the individual is protected, but the contents and the circumstances of the complaint are public, I would imagine there's still, I mean, this isn't, there's a lot of staff at City Hall, but there's not a lot of staff at City Hall. And so I'd be concerned that the individual who complained, if any element of that complaint is in any way public.
I understand what you're going, is that,
So-
that typically when complaints come forward, the person making the complaint has to have some type of knowledge that would enable them to make that complaint, and there's usually a small circle of people that would have that knowledge. And so just by common sense, you can narrow it down to a certain number of people that it could have been that filed that complaint. But that is what the statute provides for. It does not provide for anonymity of the complaint itself.
Where do the complaints come to? Do they come to the Inspector General's office, or do they come to an independent outside firm who then relays it?
It would come to, currently, it would come to the Inspector General's office.
I mean, what I'm familiar with in whistleblower is that it's an outside, unaffiliated who gets all the details and then communicates, but everything is kept, there's like a wall there. And then the report, obviously that's different here. But you also have some legal protection, is that correct? Under whistleblower for retaliation?
That is additional protections that are provided if it's an employee.
The reality is that we haven't totally established the procedures. We have looked at the procedures of the Inspector General's office, because he shared all of that with us, and his follows the state's practice to a point, and we'll likely do the same thing. I have identified an individual on our staff who is an attorney who specializes in whistleblower complaints to be primary, but it depends on how we can develop that language legally, which is not something we can totally take up here. We just have to identify here what we want to do, and then when I say we, it'll be my staff, and we'll probably include the city attorney's office, and we'll probably include his office, because one of the challenges, and we have that challenge now, he can get a complaint that belongs to me, and I can get a complaint that belongs to him, and we have to communicate, and we do that now. The beauty of this is that there is no overlap, because either the complaint should go to him or it should go to us. We don't even have to inform our board of the complaint initially. We just haven't developed that process. It's far more complex than we're stating, and it's far more vulnerable than we're stating. But it's the best that they could do, and it's the best that we can do. And when this was introduced to the city, one of the reasons they introduced it was to try to deal with situations before an individual went straight to suing the city. So that's one of the advantages that the city has. This creates a middle process. So it's a lot more to it, but we're just, like I said, we're not looking to create, we're simply looking to fill the gap and follow similar processes.
I think you just mentioned earlier, my question was going to be, if I have an ethics complaint, and if I give both of you the package, and let's say both of you disagree on the result, how would that work out?
If it was a complaint regarding the code of ethics, I would immediately refer it to the ethics board. It would not touch it at all.
Okay.
There's a narrow scope on all of this, but it's legally defined, so it's really not that hard to figure out who should be handling it, who should not be handling it. I get complaints that go to him, that should go to him, and I have to tell people it's not in my jurisdiction. They have to address it with him, and I'm through with it. It's no longer in my mind. It's not in my space, because it's his responsibility.
And one more question I have. So both of these authorities take complaints from everyone, correct?
Yes, sir.
Citizens and also the city employees.
Mhm.
So would you mind touching on that particular division of who gets what under what circumstances?
There is, and he can speak more to his department, but his area is more compliance, and mine is more ethics. His primary focus is fraud, waste, and abuse, and mine deals with 2 or 3 ordinances specifically. And so on our form, when they fill out a sworn complaint, it asks, have you given this complaint to anyone else? So at that point, I know whether it's going to his office, I know whether it's going to the state commissioner. Do you have something similar to that?
We ask when we receive
Yeah,
it.
so we both do that. And like I say, then, and we communicate, and that's up to this point. Maybe I should have said it that way, but we have worked well together in terms of trust and in terms of communication, in the interest of doing our job and in the interest of the public. Is that fair to say?
I believe so.
May I add something?
Sure.
I just want to just clarify for those who may not know that the kinds of actions that can be covered, and I'll let Dennis can speak more to this too, the kinds of things that can be covered under the whistleblower statute are very narrow. There's criminal, I mean, just to be very broad about it, there's criminal activity, and then there's sort of gross mismanagement, misuse of, or malfeasance, misfeasance, these kind of words that are actually kind of hard to define. But I believe that the only place where the Independent Ethics Board would have jurisdiction in that whistleblower statute is over allegations of misuse of position that rise to the level of what's called misfeasance, which is the improper performance of a lawful activity. So, and I say that just to say that the sort of this whistleblower statute it is a very complicated statute, but it's also, it's not anything. I think there's sort of I'll get out of legal jargon and just say, I think there, because of the sort of popular media, there's sort of the sense that everybody's running around being whistleblowers and getting, because it's what we hear about. And I think the term is often used colloquially rather than legally. And so there's just I just wanted to point out that there's really a very narrow number of sort of alleged violations that could actually even be considered to have whistleblower status in Florida. So,
and even when it occurs, we both have to be honest with people because it doesn't always protect them the way
right.
they think it would. I mean, you looked on news, sometimes people go through hell, even when they have whistleblower protection. Like I said, we're just trying to work with the tools that we have available.
I also want to remind everybody that the final purpose of the Whistleblower Act is to provide legal remedies when there is retribution based on the whistleblowing. Both offices do whatever they can to protect the identity of the complainant. But if it fails and they get retribution, they are fired, they passed up for promotion or whatever punishment they might get, even informally, there's a legal remedy for that. That's the whole point.
I was going to ask retaliation and what, do we have legal protections? And I'm pretty sure we do we have an ordinance for retaliation, or is that the state law that covers such
State law.
retaliation?
It's the state
It's
law.
the state law that covers it. Okay.
And understand, we may never get a complaint, but it's just that it only takes one. It's just like corruption. We may not get a lot of complaints, but it only takes one to breach public trust. And we're here to put a foot in the door when that one tries to creep in.
Any other comment before we actually move to?
We can sit back down.
Yes, you may. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you both.
So I have a comment. I'm not sure that I got, and I thought the explanation was excellent. I'm not sure that I got the comfort that I wanted on whether the process could be properly shielded from being used as a weapon. just gonna be honest with you all. I think that we have been operating, this committee has been operating under a cloud, and I think we've done a damn good job of not letting that penetrate our decisions. I'm very concerned about the ability of this process, especially as we're talking about an inherently political body, to be weaponized in a way that is detrimental, one, to the whistleblower, it's detrimental to our process, and I'd like to spend some more time with the whistleblower statute just to understand what that process looks like. Because that's what scares me, Mr. Payne. If we have to vote on this right now, I think I'll be down on it. But what I will commit, though, because I know that there are news clips probably being made right now of me voting down on an ethics piece, what I will commit to you is that I want to work with you on this. And I think, so let me start here. This makes sense to me. I think this makes a lot of sense. I think this is probably even the right thing to do. I'm just concerned about the climate that we're inserting this into. And so I'd like to spend some time understanding it. I'd like to spend some time even supporting it if I can get there. I wish we would have had more time to explore this over the life of this process. But if we have to vote on this issue today, I'm just not sure. I'm not sure I'm there yet. I think you've done an excellent job of explaining it, and I think I'm almost there. It's just that last little piece that scares me.
Just one point of clarification. Today, there is no protection, correct?
Right. There, for a handful of people, for
Right, but I mean-
people that report to the city commission and the inspector general.
So even though they're protected, clearly if there's only a handful of people that can be a whistleblower today, you could figure out who they are.
It can have a cascading effect, as I was trying to indicate, that if the inspector general is handling a whistleblower complaint that does not address the city commission, but he's feeling his own political pressure, it could affect his investigation.
And I had a comment.
I just wanted to add that, you know, whistleblowing aside, I think Dr. Struble asked last week, and the reason I provided these opinions, there's been a lot of paper exchanged on these issues. You know, it doesn't mean that, for example, a sitting city commissioner is not subject to the ethics rules. There are a lot, you know, there's state rules, there's, you know, so I think it's important to remember that. I respect what the Independent Ethics Board has been asking for, and I understand that. But I think sometimes in that conversation, it kind of gets lost that, you know, there are other rules in place that are governing the conduct of even this group of people that, you know, are in this, what the board is referring to as a gap.
Can I just clarify the motion that we have right now? So the motion is for what?
To recommend a charter amendment to authorize the Independent Ethics Board as an appropriate local official to receive and investigate whistleblower complaints.
Can I just, so my understanding of the items that we were talking through, including the one that I plan on presenting, was that we were discussing those for the sake of, because they're not currently in our scope. So we were discussing them for the sake of asking, essentially requesting the city commission, can we have some time to look at this? I would be, and I want to just add to that, I would be supportive of a motion where we got a little bit more time to consider this. And I think we've had some comments around the timing of what we proposed for the ballot. So I could support a motion like that. I could not support a motion to vote on this right now. So just to clarify.
To respond to that, I just want to point out that on October 11th, when the City Commission was considering the scope of the charter review, there was a lot of give and take. It's a very informative meeting if you can go back and view the video of it. At the end of it, when there was concern that the scope was too small, Mayor Daley pointed out that if the charter review came back with additional recommendations as a body, that it was his duty to consider it. Or something, without exactly quoting him, it was something to that effect. Also, regarding your, I think your main concern is with regard to due process, that people targeted by whistleblowers, that it may be unfairly targeted. From my experience with the Independent Ethics Board and from what I've seen with the Inspector General's office, they both take due process extremely seriously. With non-whistleblower complaints that the Ethics Board has been handling regularly. As I said, we go into executive session, it's not open to the public, and the public only is aware of it when we rule one way or the other.
I'm, in general, I think the more we reinforce our local ethics ordinances and the more we put emphasis on ethics, it's better for the community. It's better for the business community. It's better for local economy. It's better for investments. It's better for everything. No one wants to invest in Tallahassee when they know our local government is going through corruption. And we have seen over and over again that when there is no ethics in place in certain markets, in certain economies, that not only the citizens living in there, also businesses also lose their faith in that particular local economy and they exit. So there's no doubt that we have to commend all the work that Ethics Board and also Inspector General and everybody else is doing in this regard. However, I'm having a hard time to wrap my head around the need of this particular ask, because if I am very passionate about a commissioner that I do know that is let's just say for the sake of argument taking a vote in exchange of some sort of compensation or some sort of benefit. If as a citizen, if I'm very passionate about it, I don't know why I want to stay anonymous. I'll just take my complaint all the way up to the state ethics board, take it to you, take it to the independent ethics board, because I'm a citizen, I'm passionate about it, I hate corruption, and I come up to you guys. And then let's say that a city employee, which then there is a case for a city employee that would want to be potentially anonymous because of, because they are fearful of retaliation, then we do have certain protections that are covering them, and I'm not sure if they could stay anonymous. Is that correct to a certain degree if they're taking it up? But then commissioners in general, obviously, the reason why I think in my mind, the reason why we have the federal law and why the federal agencies had to step in back in 2015, 18, why they had to step in is that because they do have subpoena powers and they do have federal backing and many different tools in their toolbox to tap into phones or listen to this and send in undercover agents and beyond that, and I think state do have many additional tools to investigate elected officials. I think I'm having trouble to understand in general when we have a very robust federal, one of the Southeast FBI corruption offices are in Miami, is my understanding, and they do have offices here in town. I'm having a hard time to understand there's a robust federal level where we could take the complaints to, then there is a state level where we could take the complaints to. Nothing stops anyone to walk into an FBI office and say, I saw this commissioner, this is the evidence, just go ahead and investigate. So I'm just having trouble understanding this precise need. And again, if I'm a citizen and if I want to really expose corruption, I don't care to be anonymous or not. And Dr. Irvin Jackson did that for years, and he didn't really care, and he showed up at every single commission meeting until somebody went out and investigated it. So I guess, Mr. Payne, help me understand, until I see that precise need for it, I'm having, hard time to wrap my head around it.
Let me let Mr. Payne respond, since he was asked a question, and then we'll go.
You mentioned subpoena powers. The Independent Ethics Board has subpoena powers, and I believe the Inspector General does too. Yeah. So we have the ability to really, or we, I'm no longer with the Ethics Board, but they have the power to do a strong investigation, to subpoena, to have people testify when we do non-whistleblower actions. Although it's an executive session that is hidden from the public, there is a court reporter there, and those records are reported at the close of the session. But the emphasis, the reason the Independent Ethics Board was set up based on a charter amendment back in 2014 was the people were calling for a local oversight of local government, and that's why it's there.
I see.
I was just gonna say why I'm personally in favor of this. To me, it seems obvious that there is just a hole in coverage. And even if it was just the Inspector General's office, that there's nobody within the Inspector General's office for them to go, like if somebody has a complaint within that office, there's no place for them to go to complain about it within locally. They just need a location, and if he can also oversee the city commission, they just need like another, the ethics board serves as another location for people to go to with their complaints.
I have a question for the city attorney, and then I have a comment. So, when it comes to a whistleblower complaint, right now, currently, the gap that well, it could be for both, either, whoever has the answer. The gap we're trying to fill is the city commission and kind of everything under that going, so there's a city commission, and then you have the city manager, and there's a gap somewhere between there. If I were to draw an org chart, the city commission is the gap we're trying to fill. Is that accurate?
Exactly.
And the Inspector General.
And the Inspector
So
General's
city
office.
Mayor, city commissioner, Inspector General, and their staff.
Because the IG is under the city commission as an appointed
Right.
position. Okay.
And only for allegations that the Independent Ethics Board currently has jurisdiction to investigate.
Got it.
In other words, they can't be the local appropriate official for things that are outside of their jurisdiction. I think that you would agree with that, Mr. Payne, yes?
I
You
do
had-
agree with that, with the
asking.
caveat that the board is subject to revision by ordinance in the future. The ethics code could be expanded in the future, as it has been in the past. Back in 2019, the ethics code was strengthened considerably. And in fact, I think in large regard, is one reason why Irwin Jackson went to the Florida Ethics Commission rather than the Ethics Board, because before that time, the Ethics Board was, really had very little power. The Ethics Code has been expanded considerably. It still has very limited parameters, but that can be subject to change. It would not be necessary to expand the Ethics Code by charter, but by ordinance.
So, then that comes to my comment. Would you be open to amending your motion? And I still would like more time to go over this. But would you be open to amending your proposal for the charter to include some level of, and I'll defer to the city attorney on whether we can do this, but I'd like to see some sort of public records exemption for whistleblower complaints that were not substantiated or ended up with no findings.
I believe that would be covered by state law.
That's state level stuff. We don't
Yeah.
have an OGSR.
So then they would be released regardless. Once they're dispensed, one way or the other, they're released.
The complaints?
Yes.
But the identity of the
That's
whistleblower,
redacted.
if they were given whistleblower status, it's a whole nother
You need to
big
have
if, you know, that,
Gotcha.
then the identity would be protected.
So I support the direction that we're going. I support all of the work of Mr. Payne, but in lieu of the thanks, I have a lot of concerns about our ability to give equal space and time to all three of the additional recommendations. And so I have some unreadiness about us moving forward really with all three, given the fact that we have not given sufficient time for adequate consideration. So that's where I am. And I have varying degrees of opinions about all three, but I just don't feel like we have sufficient time to vet the three of them, especially equally. So those are my
Okay.
Is there only from the ethics one, the whistleblower, or there's a second one?
There's a blueprint.
All right, so there's still, after this one, there's still three remaining at your point.
So they're-
And I do have another motion regarding the jurisdiction to make.
So I would like to concur that if we get this one settled some way, that we're really left with an impossible amount of time to address the other three.
And Chair, I'm sorry, if I could have an opportunity to comment before you call the vote. I was asked last week to think about some language, and I do have some language, so before you call the vote, if I
Okay,
could
sure,
just-
go ahead.
So, Mr. Payne, when we last week asked me, you know, to consider language in addition to what you had provided, and I think what you are asking, and so I'm not trying to address your motion, I'm trying to provide language that addresses what you're trying to get at. I think we would need to add to what you provided. You said that the Independent Ethics Board would be designated by the City Commission as the appropriate local official with authority to receive and investigate complaints. I think, based on your discussion, that the complaints need to be qualified as complaints that name the mayor or their staff, the commissioners or their staff, or the inspector general or their staff, and that allege a violation that the Independent Ethics Board is empowered or has jurisdiction to investigate. And I say that only just because as you're preparing to vote, so that we can do our draft report and take back what it is that you actually intend. And maybe that's not what you intend, but you did ask me for language, and I'm just providing what I think you're saying.
Yeah, that was kind of my intent. I do think that last part is extraneous. The Ethics Board, as laid out in this charter, the duties of the Ethics Board are specific to the Ethics Code as it exists at that time, subject to change in the future. So with that in mind, that's why I'm a little bit concerned about putting that limitation in there, in addition to the statement in the charter that the Ethics Board will enforce the Ethics Code. So,
If I could maybe comment, I think it's only, I think, Ms. Tolman, your point is just stating the facts, is my understanding, is that I could make that friendly amendment to your motion, Dr. Payne, if you would accept, because I guess the idea is that we clearly define what we are voting on, and we are keeping so that there's no conflict with other existing laws and statutes and ordinances, and keeping it a little bit clean. I at least that's my understanding.
so your amendment is to follow
Yeah,
the
exactly
city
what Ms. Tolman
attorney's
said.
language, and that is her job. And I will accept your amendment under the provision that you don't call me Dr. Payne.
All right, so we have a friendly amendment to the amendment. Who seconded the motion? Are you okay with that? Very good. So the amended motion we will vote on if there is no other comment. All right, all those in favor say aye. Raise your hand, I'm sorry. those opposed, raise your hand. The motion passes 5-4, so we will move forward with that. So we are at now 7:40 with 20 minutes left in this meeting tonight, with 4 additional items to be discussed. So, because you have a second motion or something, right?
I do. I don't think it will take a lot of discussion, but let me go ahead and make it, and we can determine if it would take too much time.
Go ahead.
Motion to amend the charter to define the jurisdiction of the Independent Ethics Board over city commissioners to include their activities while sitting as board members of external government agencies.
All right, we have a motion that has been seconded. We're ready for discussion. Mr. Rose.
Can I ask a question of the city attorney? So with the bill that's being passed, how does that, and I not paid any attention to that bill, how does that affect some of what we're discussing today?
7044, which one?
The one that will.
7044, I assume?
I'm so sorry, I can't answer that.
Okay.
I really don't know what the, I have followed it, but I'm not sure the current status of it, so
Understood.
I'm not sure.
I think I can respond to that. It affects more of the whistleblower issue, but as the ethics officer said to us earlier, that there is a potential, there is legislation in the works that will prevent municipal ethics officers like ours from accepting anonymous complaints. So if that passes, that would make it all the more essential to have the whistleblower in place so that we don't have to accept anonymous complaints. I don't think that it will affect this motion to define the jurisdiction.
Got it.
All right, any other comment, question? You ready to vote? All those in favor say aye. Raise your hands, I'm sorry. Those who oppose have the same right.
Thank you.
Are you abstaining?
No, I just opposed on the basis of process.
So you were opposed?
Yes.
8-1, 8-1.
Oh, 8-1, sorry, 8-1.
All right, we'll move to the next issue, which is to reclassify the police chief position to an appointed official.
So before doing that, I have a question. That maybe we can amplify your concerns at this point in time, being that we have about 18 minutes left concerning these issues that are remaining.
You asked me to restate my
Your
unreadiness.
concerns, yeah, I just wanted to expand them, yeah.
I still have unreadiness. And again, for me, a part of it was because I did not want certain recommendations to make it and others not, simply because of the time constraint. So again, you'll see me vote down on everything because out of fairness to the issues and the public policy that we've been charged with making recommendations about.
And so my comment, adding on to that, is that with approximately 15 minutes left, how can we be doing justice to anything on discussion here? And where do we stand as a committee, I guess is the question for our chairman.
Well, let me, and if we deliberate this too much, it'd be time to go.
Accomplishing
But
exactly what we're discussing.
yes.
Yeah, I do kind of want to be fair to all these three, and I think we should allocate time. We allocated time to the ethics issue, and we were successfully go through the discussion, and I think we should move forward with all as fast as we can and just get it out the way.
Okay.
I'll just mention that there were a couple of meetings laid out for us at the beginning, should we need the time. And it seems to be the opinion of a lot of people that we do need more time. So what would be the process to request additional time from the city commission?
Thank you for the question. I, I don't remember specifically how that timeline was laid out. I will add just a few comments. The bylaws and direction given identified a 90-day window, which would give you until March the 12th to provide a report to the commission, which means effectively finish your meeting so that we could provide the report to the city commission. I think something beyond that would require approval of the city commission, which has its next meeting on March the 27th. So a request at that point would have you another 2 or 3 weeks down the road before you're taking up something else, further compressing probably the time that you have to address an issue, and then the city commission still have the appropriate time for their own deliberations. My thought had been that you had pretty clearly over the last few meetings said that you would be meeting through March the 7th, so I hadn't gone back and looked at any of those timetables. But you would, I think you would need city commission approval would be on March 27th.
Madam Chair, I'm going to make a motion that I think is going to buy us some more time. I'm going to motion to, and I'm going to make the motion, then I'd like a few minutes of personal privilege to talk about why. So I'm going to make a motion to withdraw my proposal for single member districts. And here's why. I don't think as a community we're ready to have that conversation. I've heard that loud and clear, louder from Stanley Sims, I think, than anyone else. But I'm a little frustrated with why we can't. And I think this speaks to some of the discussion we've had on this committee. We're in a position as a community where we are not able to have big conversations because we are so divided and we have so much distrust for each other that we can't be productive. And, you know, I'm guilty of this just as much as everyone else, but, you know, it's frustrating coming into this process, and maybe this is just me being naive, but I thought, man, we have some opportunity to do some cool things here. And I think we have. We've done some good work. We've had some good discussion. But there is a cloud over this community that is just frustrating. And, you know, I think we have a group of people that would rather sow discord and would rather put us in a position where we can't speak honestly, where we're so afraid of being labeled or I mean, the number of times I've been called any number of things on this committee, and it's fine, I'm a big boy, I can handle it, but I think that we've been put in a position at a time in our community where we're not able to have discussions centered around, does this make sense 10, 20, 30 years down the road, because we're so blinded by what we have going on right now. And so I'm just disappointed in the process. I'm disappointed in some of the ways that members of the public have engaged with this committee. And so I'm just hoping 6 years from now, when we have this next charter review, that they'll be in a position where they can have big discussions. And maybe the policy is not what needs to happen, great. But I'd love to see a position where we can have those discussions without fear of each other, and we can have those discussions and really talk about the policy and whether it makes sense, and be able to put aside some of the craziness. And so with that, I'd repeat my motion. I am motioning to withdraw the single member district proposal. I hope at some point in the future we can have that conversation, because I truly believe it's something that we're going to need. And with that, I ask for a second.
Is there a second?
To the withdrawal.
You could
Withdraw, yeah, he could withdraw.
Okay, all right, now we're ready for discussion.
I offer amendment to withdraw the motion for the reclassification of police chief, along with the district's motion as well. I mean, along with the district's proposal, but to withdraw both together. Friendly amendment.
Are you okay with the friendly amendment?
Yep.
All right. Who seconded it? You
Yes.
okay
Dr.
with the
Payne?
friendly?
Yes.
friendly?
No, now.
All right, so now the motion is for both the reclassification of the police chief position and the single member districts from the discussion. Any other discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Raise your hand. I forgot. All right, those.
I have a question.
Okay, are you,
She was an aye, right?
okay, all right. Yes, ma'am.
Yes, this may be a Robert's Rules question, Stanley. Is there any way to recall the vote so that it's unanimous on the ethics?
I think we said no in a previous.
No.
Right, I don't think you can't, you would have to do a motion for reconsideration that would have to be voted on and then reconsider the vote.
So I move for reconsideration.
I'll second that.
All right, it's been moved and properly second that we reconsider.
Which
the
one?
vote for
There were two different
the
votes we took on the
which
ethics.
one, the
Ethics.
vote?
You have to do them one at a time, so motion for reconsideration of the vote on the whistleblower issue.
Let's start with whistleblower.
And the intent here is to make it a
Unanimous.
unanimous vote?
Yes.
She's right though, don't you have to be on the prevailing side? You have to be on the prevailing side to
Oh,
call for
Yes, you do have to be
reconsideration?
on the prevailing
Then I'll
side.
make the motion.
I second it.
Sorry.
I forgot that you voted, yes, you're saying yes. you
Robert's
can't make the
rules.
motion.
That's
I'll
Right.
second it.
Thank you.
No, it was seconded.
Oh,
I
second
can't,
again.
because I voted no on the motion, so.
Yeah, sure, I did it, yeah, we did it.
Kessler did
Yeah.
though.
Okay,
Yeah.
Kessler and Miller. Motion by Kessler, second by Miller.
Yep, that works.
all right. I'm almost afraid to ask for discussion, but
I think we're ready to vote.
This is just on the motion to reconsider.
that's
Yes.
all it is.
Okay.
I've already been put on the record as voting down. I mean, it's gonna be all over our Tallahassee. It's, you know, it is what it is. I will vote in favor of this motion. I just want to again reiterate, I am very concerned that this is going to be used as a political weapon. I hope I'm wrong. I am in favor of the concept. I'm in favor of the policy. I'm worried about what this is gonna mean. And so with that, I'll be up on the motion.
All right, all those in favor say aye. This is just for reconsideration now. All right,
Unanimous, got
Now
it.
we-
unanimous. So you
Do we
want-
restate the motion now?
Yes, somebody has to make.
Dr. Payne?
Where was it?
Sorry.
Recommend
Yeah.
motion.
A
Is that how
motion,
that's supposed to
You
go?
can read
Amy?
it back if you have it.
Restate.
You wanna make sure?
We may have an informal.
Call you Doc.
To recommend a charter amendment to authorize the Independent Ethics Board as the appropriate local official to receive and investigate whistleblower complaints.
With the amendment.
With
Yeah.
With-
Yeah,
Miss-
amendment.
the
amendment.
the amendment was on the second motion.
Yes,
It was a substance, yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
all right. So we have them, are you making the motion that she just read?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
All right, all those in, oh, I'm sorry, discussion.
No
Follow
discussion.
appropriate order. All right, now, all those in favor, raise your hand.
Unanimous?
We made it unanimous.
Okay.
All right.
Thank you.
Oh, we have to do the second one. What was the second one?
I'll make a motion to reconsider the second motion.
All right,
You were on the prevailing
You were.
side.
Yep,
all right,
And
I'll second that. Well, go ahead, Chantal's gonna second.
all right, all those in favor, raise your hand.
Of reconsidering.
Yes,
Yeah.
of just reconsidering. And that is unanimous. Okay? Now, is there a motion?
I'll make a
Motion.
motion to, oh, Dr.
Payne.
Dr. Payne?
Okay, I make a motion to amend the charter to define the jurisdiction of the Independent Ethics Board over city commissioners to include their activities while sitting as board members of external government agencies.
All right, is there a second?
Second.
All those in favor, raise your hand.
Aye.
All right, we made it unanimous. Okay,
All
do you have any,
One question,
Yeah,
I'm sorry, when the report is made for our recommendations, will the vote total be part of that?
I think it just said they recommend.
yeah, unanimous.
As it was drafted, we have simply provided the result of your vote.
Okay.
Certainly, your minutes and documentation will cover those. If I may, one thing, Madam Chair.
I was gonna ask if we're gonna have an opportunity to share a couple thoughts before we close it.
Absolutely.
All right. Well, I'm, without holding anyone else here
You got
too
one
long. What is it?
You have 1 minute.
minute.
So others can talk.
Let me start real quickly. I'm going to just reiterate what Jared said earlier. I really enjoyed working with every single one of you, and I know that I was the one that had a single one just a spatial article written about me, and I just kind of like that. But you know, it's just in general it just makes it look a little bit funny. But I know that we started off with controversy. But overall, I do appreciate each one of you guys that give your time here. Overall, just you don't have to be here, but you decided to be here and participate in our bicentennial charter review. I think this is going to be a memorable overall to our future generations to come. But just to kind of reiterate what Jerry said, I am a bit disappointed. I'm a bit disappointed, and this is on the serious note that I haven't been more convinced than I am today, right now as this moment, that whatever I am doing outside of my business and paying my bills and beyond that, and in my, free times, whatever I'm doing, I think it's necessary. I think this town is extremely divided to a point where we cannot even thoroughly discuss with no outside influence topics that are presented. I have seen cases, particularly with our group, where outside groups constantly try to influence the opinions of individuals, and I think we can do better as a community. And if we cannot do better as a community, we will not be able to resolve issues surrounding ethics. We will not be resolving issues surrounding economic development, workforce development. I think we need to be honest. I'm hoping that me and my wife, we are going to be raising our family in Tallahassee, so I'm not going anywhere. For those who don't like me, I'll be here for a while now. But I'm hoping 10 years from now, or 6 years from now, when we are having another charter review, I'm hoping that we moved our community forward by then, and we are not having these petty dialogues and those re-election campaigns that start on social media that doesn't dictate the main charter of the city. I think we all have a duty for future generations. Yeah, we just have a duty. I just want to say that we just have a duty for future generations to be honest, and we just need to pass that along.
All right, thank you. Dr. Struble.
Thank you for the comments. I thank everybody for your time here. I thought we did a great job. There was whatever controversy, and I understand those divisions, but I want to make it clear those divisions exist for a reason. We have communities that are split. We have distrust for a reason. It's because of actions that have been taken. People feel violated. People feel that they haven't been heard, and that's why I think we did a good job in bringing in public opinion here, hearing what the community had to say, and what you're going to hear is people being honest. I don't think people were coming in here lying. They're telling you how they feel, and I think it was important that we took the time to listen to them, and we made our decisions accordingly. We all have to live in this community. I have to go back out there and talk to people about the decisions that we made, and that's how every time we made a decision, that's what I was thinking. How am I going to explain this to my constituency, which is the people who I live with, the families that I work with, and all those people. So just be very careful that we don't take condescending tones towards community members for sharing their experiences. When we asked them to come here, we needed their input. So I appreciate all of you, and thank you for your time. Thank you for allowing me to be here.
Yeah.
So, I just want to say, I really appreciated this, including Commissioner Mustin. We have differences of opinions. That's what's supposed to take place here. Even the differences of opinions were handled in a respectful manner. Yeah. And I couldn't be more proud of this group, so thank you. I learned a lot.
Anyone else that needs to make a comment?
committee.
Anyone else?
But just a point of privilege on my end to thank each of you for your diligent, dedicated, focused, and committed work. I had people, as the committee was being set up, said, they're gonna have a committee of 10? You can't have an even number. And I said, I didn't know you yet, but you proved what I thought, which is, if the committee's 5 to 5, you've got an item that's probably a problem anyway. And so you have reached agreement on things, and to the thought of divisive or public or whatever, in my opinion, you weren't asked to solve that problem. You were asked to address some things for the city commission, and the 10 of you came in here and have done that week after week, the way you're supposed to. I've enjoyed working with you. I don't have any idea what the city commission will do with what you've taken forward, but from my perspective, each of you can hold your head high and say, we've done the job we were asked to do, and I thank you.
All right, I'm gonna have a final comment, and then we're gonna adjourn. And it's really on behalf of the chair, as well as myself, in terms of my leadership role, that we have done really an exemplary job as a team coming together toward a common goal, which were the items that we started out with and those we added. So, thank you all very much, and good night.
All right, let me ask you a question. What's the difference in what we did and what these things say?
Strong name versus.
Mr. Bureau? Thank you, sir.
Hope you were taking careful notes.
I was.